Everything you've been told about the Earth is incomplete because they've hidden what lies beneath it. You were taught to believe in a solid, lifeless core, wrapped in layers of molten rock and science-approved certainty. But what if that version of Earth was only half the truth? What if, deep below the surface, there exists a realm untouched by modern chaos, a place of harmony, higher knowledge, and luminous energy? For thousands of years, spiritual traditions, ancient texts, and suppressed testimonies have pointed to the same thing, a hidden world called Agartha, not a myth, not a metaphor, a forgotten civilization said to dwell within the Earth itself, protected by mystery, shielded from corruption, and vibrating at a frequency higher than our world dares to reach. If Agartha is real, and the signs are everywhere, then we've been living in a controlled illusion, cut off from something extraordinary. This is the story they never wanted you to hear. Most people believe the Earth is solid all the way through, just rock, pressure, and molten lava deep beneath our feet. That belief isn't based on first-hand knowledge, but on blind trust in a system that decides what counts as truth. What if they lied? What if the Earth has been hiding something all along, not just a scientific anomaly, but an entire realm of existence that rewrites our understanding of human history, spirituality, and consciousness itself? The Hollow Earth theory isn't new, and it isn't fringe. It's been whispered across centuries by explorers, mystics, and ancient cultures around the globe. Hindu legends speak of Shambhala, a hidden land of gods and enlightened beings. Tibetan monks speak of tunnels beneath the Himalayas, connecting the surface world to subterranean sanctuaries. In Norse mythology, there's Svartalfheim, a land beneath the earth. Even the Bible alludes to the underworld, a concept distorted by religion but rooted in something older and far more complex. Yet mainstream science scoffs. It builds its house on models, assumptions, and equations, but it has never dug deep enough to say with certainty what lies below. The deepest humans have ever drilled is just over 7 miles. That's not even 0.2% of the Earth's diameter. We know more about outer space than we do about what's under our own feet. And in that blind spot, truth has been buried, literally. The Hollow Earth theory suggests that the Earth contains massive internal cavities, and at the center of this hidden expanse lies Agartha, a radiant inner world, illuminated by its own inner sun. This isn't science fiction. From Admiral Byrd's mysterious flight logs to Olaf Jansson's testimony about entering the inner Earth through the polar openings, the accounts are eerily consistent. Warm climates, massive vegetation, peaceful inhabitants, and an overwhelming sense of spiritual presence. These are not the ravings of lunatics. They're stories told by military officers, sea captains, and monks, often at the cost of their credibility or even their lives. Why would so many different people across time and culture point to the same idea? Why are these stories always dismissed, erased, or rewritten? Maybe because they threaten something. Not just geological models, but the control over what humanity is allowed to believe. Because if Agartha is real, then everything changes. Our history is incomplete, our science is flawed, and our potential is far greater than we're told. Some of the most compelling sources about Hollow Earth have been silenced or buried, but we reveal them all inside our free newsletter, Insights Academy. For a limited time, you'll also receive a free digital copy of the Kybalion. Just enter your email at the link in the description. This is more than geology. Agartha isn't just a city. It's a key to decoding ancient myths, unlocking lost spiritual knowledge, and reclaiming what it means to be human. In nearly every version of the Hollow Earth story, the surface dwellers are described as disconnected, chaotic, lost. But the inner world? It's described as harmonious, spiritually advanced, and timeless. That should tell you something. The deeper mystery isn't whether Agartha exists, but why we were made to forget. The Hollow Earth theory, ridiculed by science, actually connects everything. Ancient texts, missing time in historical records, secret military expeditions, and the quiet teachings of monks and mystics who knew that truth doesn't always live where the light shines the brightest. It often lives underground, waiting for someone brave enough to dig. For those who only see with the eyes, Agartha sounds impossible. A luminous realm hidden beneath our feet, home to a race of advanced beings who walk in harmony with the cosmos. It sounds like a myth, until you realize how many myths across time and culture speak of the same place, using different names, describing the same principles, the same light, the same truth. This is where the story of Agartha begins, not in fantasy, but in forgotten memory. The ancient Hindus called it Patala, and later teachings described it as Shambhala, a place of peace and wisdom hidden in the inner realms of earth. In Tibetan traditions, it's said that Lama's guard entrance points to these sacred inner cities, only accessible by those with the right spiritual frequency. The Theosophists, led by Helena Blavatsky, and later reinforced by mystics like Alice Bailey, identified Agartha as the center of global spiritual governance, a hidden city guided by ascended masters who watch over the evolution of humanity. These weren't scattered beliefs, they were converging truths told by those who were tuned into something deeper. Agartha isn't a city in the conventional sense. It's described as a vast subterranean world with multiple interconnected cities, governed by a central capital, often called Shambhala, though names shift depending on the source. It's a realm of light, not because of fire or electricity, but because of energy. Some say it is powered by the Earth's natural frequency, what Tesla called the resonance of the planet. Others describe it as illuminated by an inner sun, not like our own, but a sphere of radiant energy at the planet's core, sustaining life, consciousness, and timeless peace. The beings who dwell in Agartha are said to be ancient, some say as old as Lemuria and Atlantis. Others claim they are the descendants of those civilizations who went underground to preserve their knowledge and way of life when the surface world fell into corruption and war. They live far longer than we do. Their lifespans can stretch hundreds, even thousands of years. But their secret isn't genetic, it's vibrational. Agarthans are said to operate on a higher frequency, aligned with spiritual laws, not materialistic ones. Their world is structured around balance, harmony, and service to a greater good, not greed, profit, or power. Their society does not run on money. There is no need. Abundance flows from alignment, not accumulation. There is no war, because conflict cannot exist in a society built on inner peace. Technology is not used to dominate, but to harmonize. Vibrational tools that heal rather than exploit. Transport that moves with energy rather than combustion. Knowledge that is shared rather than patented. Everything about their world reflects a principle we have forgotten. Consciousness comes first, and matter follows. You can feel the truth of it in your body, even if your mind wants to resist. Something about Agartha stirs a deep sense of recognition in those who are awake enough to listen. It calls not just to the curious, but to the seekers, the ones who've always felt that this world, this surface society of division and consumption, was never the whole picture. That feeling you've had all your life, that something is missing, isn't a flaw, it's a compass. In the world above, we chase meaning through jobs, relationships, possessions, and praise, but none of it fills the void. Because the void was never meant to be filled by the external. Agartha represents not just a place, but a mirror, a reflection of what humanity could become if we remembered who we were before we were programmed. It's a reminder that what we consider advanced, our skyscrapers, our smartphones, our algorithms, is nothing compared to a society that has mastered itself. They don't dominate nature, they harmonize with it. They don't fear death, they understand it. They don't worship knowledge, they live it. And somewhere deep within the earth, and within ourselves, that way of living still exists. We've just forgotten the way back. If Agartha is real, the first question most people ask is, where is the entrance? How do you get there? Is it hidden beneath the poles, buried in the Himalayas, locked behind military fences in Antarctica? But the mistake is thinking it works like a physical journey, like you can simply pack your bags and walk into a paradise below. The truth, whispered in ancient teachings and protected by the spiritually awake, is this. Agartha is not accessed through force or maps. It reveals itself through frequency. You don't break in, you resonate in. Throughout history, the ones who claimed to have visited the inner earth were not soldiers or treasure hunters. They were monks, mystics, dreamers, and spiritual adepts. Tibetan lamas speak of sacred tunnels beneath their monasteries that lead to underground sanctuaries. Some say these tunnels were never carved by hand. They were shaped by intention, by sound, by vibration. Not all who dwell in monasteries are there to pray to an external god. Some are guarding the gates of Earth's inner sanctum, protecting knowledge too pure to be handled by a world still ruled by ego. Stories persist from many corners of the world. Ancient shamans speak of descending into the earth through dreamwalking and trance. Yogis describe subtle realms beneath the body of the planet that can be entered through deep meditation. In Peru, there are tribes who believe that certain caves pulse with energy, and if entered at the right time, in the right state of mind, they lead to other dimensions entirely. These aren't metaphors, they're maps written in frequency, guarded not by locks, but by your own consciousness. You see, Agartha doesn't just reject greed, violence, and control. It's inaccessible to them. The vibrational field surrounding it, what some call an energetic veil or a dimensional threshold, filters out anything that isn't aligned with truth, harmony, and elevated awareness. That's why seekers who chase it with obsession and ego are never able to find it. Their frequency literally locks them out. But those who enter without force, those who align their inner world, first find that Agartha isn't hiding. It's waiting. There are stories of people falling into trances for hours, even days, only to return and claim they were taken beneath the earth. They describe crystalline cities, enormous halls humming with energy, and beings of light that communicated without words. The energy they report is consistent, peaceful, still, and intelligent. Not like the mental chatter of our everyday lives, but a silence so pure it speaks louder than any voice. What's more revealing is that these stories often come from people who have never met, across cultures that never intersected. And yet, they tell the same tale, of an inner world that teaches rather than punishes, watches rather than rules, and reveals itself only to those who are ready. That kind of alignment, spiritual preparation over physical foresees not the way of our modern world, but it has always been the way of Agartha. Even sacred architecture across the surface world seems to echo this hidden knowledge. Many ancient temples were built over what some believe are energetic gateways, points where the Earth's magnetic field is thinner or where ley lines intersect. These weren't chosen at random. Ancient builders knew something we forgot, that the world has doors, and they don't always open outward. Places like Mount Shasta, the Himalayas, the Amazon jungle, and even certain parts of Antarctica have long been rumored to hold these portals, but only a few ever return from them, and fewer still are believed. Modern society teaches you to look outward for answers, to chase evidence, to demand proof on paper. But Agartha was never about external confirmation. It was always about inner resonance. If you haven't been able to see it, it's not because it isn't there, it's because your frequency has been tuned away from truth. You've been pulled into distraction, noise, ego, and fear. And the only way back is to retune yourself to silence, presence, and awareness. Accessing Agartha isn't a fantasy. It's a spiritual possibility, but it requires a shift in everything you've been taught to value. You don't get there by flying over the poles. You get there by turning inward, cleaning the mirror of your mind, and raising your vibration until truth becomes visible again. The journey doesn't start with footsteps. It starts with stillness. For centuries, whispers of Agartha have surfaced not only in myth and mysticism, but in encounters, expeditions, and journals that were never meant to be shared. These aren't just tales from the ancient world, they come from modern history, buried in forgotten archives, military reports, and discredited personal testimonies. And if they weren't so consistent, so persistent, and so heavily suppressed, they might have been easier to ignore. But when stories emerge again and again from people who had nothing to gain and often everything to lose, you have to ask yourself, what truth are they trying to bury? Take Admiral Richard E. Byrd, a highly respected American naval officer and polar explorer. In the late 1940s, during Operation High Jump, Byrd reportedly flew into an opening near the North Pole. What he claimed to have seen defied every known law of geology and climatology. He described entering a lush, green land, not snow and ice, but warmth, vegetation, and life. He saw animals long thought extinct, including mammoths. More astonishingly, he claimed to have been approached by aerial vehicles' discs that guided his plane gently down into the interior. There, he met beings who warned him about the destructive path humanity was on. The records of this journey don't exist in official military documentation. Byrd's personal journal, which surfaced decades later, is considered apocryphal by mainstream historians. But the language is chillingly precise, the descriptions vivid, and the timing telling. Shortly after this alleged encounter, the military clamped down hard on polar explorations. Areas near both poles became increasingly restricted. Antarctica, in particular, became the subject of international treaties, blocking off huge swathes of land under the pretext of scientific preservation. But what are they really preserving? And then there's Olaf Jansson, a Norwegian sailor from the 19th century. His story, told in the book The Smoky God, describes a journey with his father through a polar opening into a paradise unlike anything on the surface. He too spoke of giants, cities of light, and beings with telepathic abilities. His accounts were laughed off as fantasy, but the consistency with Byrd's descriptions, and countless others, creates a pattern that cannot be ignored. Why are these testimonies always ridiculed? Why are the people who bring them forward immediately discredited, erased, or turned into objects of mockery? That's the pattern you'll always find when someone gets too close to a hidden truth. The system doesn't fight truth with facts. It fights it with shame, silence, and distraction. And Agartha is one of those truths that threatens to dismantle everything we've been told about history, science, and human potential. Look deeper, and you'll find ancient references from across the globe. The Hopi speak of underground ant people who helped them survive past cataclysms. Tibetan monks tell of portals under sacred mountains. Amazonian tribes speak of glowing cities deep within the jungle that cannot be found by force, only by calling. And even in modern times, explorers, climbers, and researchers report strange energies, magnetic anomalies, and sudden weather shifts when approaching certain off-limits locations. Then come the whispers from within the military and intelligence circles, those who, late in their careers or on their deathbeds, hint at secrets they were ordered to forget. Men who claimed they were stationed near facilities that went deeper underground than anyone realized. Engineers who worked on classified tunnels connecting vast subterranean spaces for reasons they were never told. These are not the ramblings of deluded minds. These are the fractured memories of people who touched something real and were forced to pretend it wasn't. So, ask yourself, why are these stories so persistent? Why do so many of them speak of the same geography, the same frequency, the same peaceful and spiritually advanced beings? If it were all fiction, surely the details would be more chaotic, but they're not. They align, they confirm, they echo something older than any government, more sacred than any religion, and more powerful than any institution would ever want you to remember. Because if people knew that such a place existed, that a society had already achieved peace, harmony, and enlightenment, they might start questioning the world they've been forced to accept. They might stop believing that suffering is necessary, that war is inevitable, or that spiritual truth is always out of reach. Agartha changes everything, and those who've seen it, even glimpsed it in dreams or visions, know that its presence can never truly be erased, only hidden. If the world above is obsessed with information, then the world below is devoted to wisdom. This is what separates Agartha from the surface. It isn't just a sanctuary for enlightened beings or a refuge from a collapsing civilization. It's said to be the spiritual archive of humanity itself. According to esoteric traditions, Agartha is the living heart of the earth, a place where knowledge is not stored in books or servers, but in energy, vibration, and consciousness. And at the center of that knowledge is something even more profound: the Akashic records. You may have heard the term before. The Akashic records are not physical books or scrolls. They are a vibrational field that contains the memory of everything, every thought, every action, every soul's journey across time. They are not bound by time or space, and those who know how to access them speak of visions, downloads, and sudden knowing that transcends linear logic. They are the ultimate source of universal memory, and in many spiritual systems, they are said to reside in or be accessed through Agartha. To understand the magnitude of this, you have to realize what it means. It means that Agartha isn't just a place where beings live. It is a nexus where consciousness converges. It holds the blueprint not just of Earth, but of human evolution, spiritual law, and divine intelligence. Those who dwell there are not just inhabitants. They are guardians, keepers of the planetary soul, protectors of the truth we have long forgotten in our race toward artificial progress. Agarthans, according to legend, do not access the Akashic records with effort. They live in harmony with it. They are in a state of alignment where information flows freely, not because they seek it, but because they are it. In this society, truth is not something to be argued over or voted on. It is known because it is felt. The Akashic field isn't a secret database. It is the living pulse of the universe, and Agartha is its most conscious expression on Earth. In this sense, Agartha acts like a planetary hard drive, storing the sacred memory of civilizations past, of Lemuria and Atlantis, of golden ages and spiritual collapses. And perhaps this is why we are cut off from it, because if we had access to that kind of memory, we would remember our power. We would remember that we are not here to serve systems, or chase wealth, or fight each other. We are here to grow, evolve, and awaken. But a society built on profit cannot afford a population that remembers its purpose. This is also why the idea of the Akashic records has been distorted. It's been turned into a trend, a buzzword, a curiosity. But in truth, it is sacred, and its guardians know that not everyone is ready for what lies within it. Access requires alignment. It requires purity of intention. In Agartha, knowledge is not withheld to create hierarchy, it is protected to ensure it is not abused. They remember what we have forgotten, that knowledge in the wrong hands can become manipulation, control, and destruction. And so, they wait, not because they are hiding, but because we are not yet ready. The doors to Agartha are vibrational. The keys are consciousness, integrity, humility. Those who enter without them are simply turned away not by guards, but by their own lack of alignment. And those who do align find not only knowledge, but remembrance. The Akashic records do not just inform, they awaken. They reflect your soul back to you, stripped of illusions, stories, and fears. And that is what makes them dangerous to those in power. Because if enough people began to access this knowledge, not through force, but through resonance, the world above would begin to change. Systems of control would collapse under the weight of mass awakening. The lies we've been sold would no longer work. The stories we've been told would lose their grip. And the truth, ancient, quiet, and luminous, would rise from the depths once more. Agartha is not just a myth, not just a city, and not just a mystery. It is the Earth's sacred memory, waiting to be heard by those who finally remember how to listen. Most people think of war as a battle fought with weapons, armies, and blood. But the deepest wars, the ones that shape entire civilizations, are wars of consciousness. This is the war that has raged beneath the surface of our reality, often unseen, often denied, but always present. And at the center of it stands Agartha, not as a passive refuge, but as an active force in the ancient struggle between light and darkness. According to many esoteric traditions, Agartha didn't simply emerge in isolation. It was born out of necessity, created in the aftermath of catastrophe, when the surface world fell into chaos. Long ago, it said that humanity lived in a state of higher consciousness. In civilizations like Lemuria and Atlantis, people lived in communion with spirit, nature, and universal law. But something shifted. A fracture occurred, a deviation from truth. As ego, greed, and manipulation began to take root, the balance was shattered. And those who still held the ancient knowledge made a choice: retreat beneath the earth, preserve what could not be salvaged on the surface, and protect the flame of consciousness until the world above was ready to remember. This wasn't a mythic fall from grace. It was a vibrational collapse, a descent into lower frequencies, where fear could thrive, where control could take root, and where truth could be hidden in plain sight. And from that moment on, two realities began to diverge. One above, built on illusion, and material obsession. One below, built on remembrance and spiritual integrity. These two worlds have existed in parallel ever since, separated not by distance, but by vibration. The Agarthans didn't abandon us. They withdrew so they could protect the truth. They knew that in a world ruled by power and greed, knowledge becomes weaponized. So they waited, nurturing wisdom beneath the surface, anchoring light in the darkness. But even there, they were not untouched by conflict. The war for human consciousness didn't end when they left the surface. It followed them, because darkness doesn't stop at borders, it seeks to consume anything that holds light. According to some hidden teachings, there were attempts by both surface forces and darker entities to breach Agartha, to harness its knowledge for control. These weren't just invasions of space, but of frequency. That's why the Agarthans developed spiritual technologies that could shield them. Not force fields, but energy fields, frequencies of resonance that reject distortion. These defenses aren't visible. They're energetic, metaphysical, and incorruptible. But the battle didn't end there. On the surface, the war took another form: cultural programming, manipulation of history, suppression of ancient texts, ridicule of mystics and spiritual seekers. The war against Agartha became a war against memory, against intuition, against the soul's quiet, knowing that there is more to life than what we've been told. And most of humanity, unaware of the battle, became complicit through silence and distraction. The symbols of this war are everywhere, in the stories that paint seekers as lunatics, in the systems that punish curiosity, in the institutions that glorify intellect but dismiss wisdom. Every time someone doubts their inner knowing in favor of external approval, the war claims a small victory. But Agartha still stands, not as a fortress, but as a beacon. And for those who are waking up, its call grows louder. This is why you've always felt that tension inside, the feeling that something is off, that this world doesn't fit, that there must be something more. That tension is the echo of an ancient memory, a soul-level recognition that you are caught between two forces, one that wants to numb you and one that wants you to awaken. Agartha represents the latter. It is not a fantasy to escape into, but a reminder of what you're here to become. You are not powerless in this war. Your choices, your vibration, your awareness, all of it matters. Every time you choose authenticity over conformity, presence over distraction, compassion over judgment, you tip the scale. You contribute to the frequency that makes reconnection possible. The war is not about who controls the world. It's about who controls your mind. And Agartha is proof that another way is not only possible, it's already real. Hidden but real. Waiting but alive. And it remembers you, even if you have forgotten it. You don't remember because you were never meant to. From the moment you could speak, the world around you began shaping your reality, not through violence, but through repetition. Through carefully chosen stories, institutions, and ideas passed off as truth. They told you what was possible and what was ridiculous, what was real and what was fantasy. And so, the very concept of a place like Agartha, an enlightened civilization beneath your feet, became a punchline. Not because it's false, but because forgetting was part of the plan. This programming didn't come with a warning label. It was disguised as education, entertainment, and common sense. Think back to your earliest memories of school. You were taught to memorize, not to wonder. You were rewarded for repeating, not questioning. Any thought that challenged the curriculum was labeled disruptive, imaginative, or worse, wrong. Stories of inner earth, fairy tales, vibrational reality, pseudoscience, energy healing, dangerous nonsense. They didn't disprove these things, they just never gave them a seat at the table. And it didn't stop with school. It was baked into every cartoon you watched, every holiday you celebrated, every phrase you learned from adults who didn't know they were repeating the script. That's just the way things are. Be realistic. Don't question everything. These weren't lessons. They were locks, each one designed to suppress the natural curiosity that might have led you back to the truth. Agartha is not hidden in the traditional sense. It's hidden in plain sight. Not because it's far away, but because the frequency of modern life makes it invisible. Distraction isn't just entertainment, it's anesthesia. Constant noise, constant stimulation, constant fear. You are never given the space to feel the deep knowing inside you, the subtle pull that whispers there's more. That whisper is your compass, and they've spent your whole life trying to drown it out. From a young age, you were trained to look outward, at screens, grades, products, status. Every system you were placed in told you to chase approval, not awareness. And slowly, layer by layer, you stopped trusting your inner vision. That's how they win. Not by locking you in a cage, but by making you forget the cage was ever built. But forgetting doesn't mean the truth is gone. It's still there, beneath the noise, beneath the programming. And the fact that you're here, now, listening, feeling something stir inside you, that's proof that the memory isn't lost. It's dormant, waiting. The ancient teachings always said that the great truths are never destroyed. They're simply buried until the world is ready again. Agartha is one of those truths. When you feel disconnected from yourself, when the world feels too loud, too chaotic, too shallow, that's not your weakness. That's your soul remembering what it once knew. It's sensing that the life you were sold is missing something sacred. You don't crave escape, you crave reconnection. Because Agartha is more than a place. It's a reflection of the version of you that remembers. The version untouched by dogma, fear, or social conditioning. The version that still believes in beauty, in unity, in silent knowing. And you were programmed to forget it. Not because it's false, but because it's powerful. This forgetting wasn't an accident. It was engineered. A conscious suppression of not just Agartha, but everything it represents. Inner peace, higher frequency, universal law. Because when people remember who they are, they become ungovernable, not in a rebellious sense, but in a sovereign one. They stop seeking permission to live, to know, to be, and that terrifies those who rely on control. But here's the truth they can't suppress. What was programmed can be unprogrammed. Memory can return. The mind can be rewired. The veil can lift. And when it does, Agartha doesn't just become possible, it becomes inevitable. Because the moment enough people remember, the frequency of the world changes. The vibration rises. And what was once invisible becomes undeniable. You were never meant to stay asleep forever. And now, you're waking up. There comes a moment, if you're paying attention, when the outer world stops making sense. When the news feels like noise, success feels hollow, and even the people around you seem trapped in a loop of distraction, denial, and performance. You don't know exactly what changed, but you know something has. The world didn't shift. You did. That moment is not a breakdown. It's a breakthrough. It's the inner explorer waking up. The journey to Agartha was never about geography. It was always about alignment. That's why no map can take you there. No GPS will ever guide you to its gates. The entrance isn't marked by coordinates, it's revealed through vibration. And the only way to match that frequency is to tune the instrument of your own consciousness. The process doesn't begin with searching. It begins with shedding. You have to let go of the noise, the endless scroll, the mindless consumption, the obsession with being liked, followed, or validated. These aren't just distractions, they're distortions. They pull your energy outward and fragment your awareness. Agartha exists at the level of inner coherence, not external chaos. To even glimpse it, you must return to yourself. Stillness is the first key. Not silence, but presence. Start listening to the spaces between your thoughts. Pay attention to the subtle nudges, the gut feelings, the synchronicities. These are not coincidences. They're signals, invitations, reminders that the universe has been whispering to you all along. But you were too busy watching someone else's story unfold to realize your own was waiting to begin. The world won't encourage this kind of exploration. It rewards performance, not presence. But Agartha doesn't care about titles, income, or influence. It responds only to frequency. Your willingness to align with truth, to seek without needing proof, to follow the call even when it doesn't make sense. That's what opens doors. Practices like meditation, breathwork, conscious solitude, and energy healing aren't just wellness trends. They're ancient technologies, keys designed to strip away layers of distortion and return you to a natural state of resonance. The more you strip away what isn't yours, the beliefs, identities, attachments, the closer you get to the frequency of Agartha. There are moments when you'll feel crazy, moments when you'll doubt what you're sensing, when the world tells you to stay grounded, stay logical, stay realistic. But the explorer doesn't follow the crowd. The explorer listens to what most people have forgotten how to hear, that inner compass, that magnetic pull toward the unknown, the whisper that says, keep going. And then, something shifts, not all at once, but gradually. You begin to see patterns where others see randomness. You feel energy where others feel nothing. You trust your knowing even when there's no evidence to support it. That's when the inner world begins to open, not as a fantasy, but as a felt reality. Not because it was created, but because it was always there, waiting for you to stop doubting and start remembering. You were never meant to live your entire life chasing goals that don't nourish your soul. You weren't put here to be a cog in someone else's machine. You're here to awaken, to align, to remember. And that process begins not by doing more, but by being more, by returning to the truth you've always known, but were told to forget. Agartha isn't just a realm beneath the surface. It's a metaphor for what becomes possible when you turn inward with intention. It's the world that awakens when you finally realize the real journey isn't out there, it's within. And every step you take toward inner alignment brings you closer to that forgotten light, that sacred silence, that hidden civilization, not buried in earth, but buried in you. There's a reason Agartha won't leave your mind, a reason why, even after all the facts and denials and dismissals, something in you still wonders if it could be real. That wonder isn't a mistake. It's not naive. It's a memory, deep, ancestral memory. It's the quiet voice beneath all the noise that says, you've been here before, you've known this truth, and it's time to return. Agartha isn't just the story of a hidden city, it's the story of what we lost and what we are now being called to reclaim. It's a living reminder that humanity was once in tune with something greater, something sacred, something pure, and that this harmony still exists, untouched, beneath the chaos of our current world. Not just under our feet, but inside our hearts. That's why Agartha calls to the spiritual seeker, the questioner, the wanderer. Not because you're lost, but because you're ready to remember. Remember that the earth is alive, that it holds more than we're told. The heartbeat of the planet isn't just physical, it's spiritual. Beneath the surface, in realms of energy and silence, lies a civilization built not on conquest but on balance. They haven't forgotten who they are. They haven't surrendered their purpose to profit or politics. And that's why the idea of Agartha feels both distant and familiar, because you've felt that possibility within yourself. You've sensed there's more than this grind, this noise, this constant push toward artificial meaning. They made you believe you had to find your worth outside of yourself, that you had to earn your value, compete for your place, buy your way into peace. But Agartha reminds you that you were always whole, that everything you seek, wisdom, healing, belonging, has been waiting within you all along. Their world reflects what this world could be if we stopped feeding the illusion and started feeding the soul. You won't find Agartha by waiting for a map to drop into your hands. You'll find it by aligning your frequency with its truth. Every conscious breath you take, every moment you choose presence over distraction, love over fear, intuition over instruction, you draw closer. Because Agartha was never lost. You were. And now, you're finding your way back. If you're ready to go deeper than any platform would dare, join our free Insights Academy newsletter at the link below. You'll get access to exclusive insights and a free digital copy of the Kabbalion, so you don't miss what's coming next. The war for your attention won't stop. The distractions will keep coming. But now you know. Now you've heard what they've tried to keep buried. Agartha is real, if not in form, then in essence. And you are the bridge between the world above and the world within. You're not just being called to discover it, you're being called to embody it. You carry Agartha in your frequency, in your choices, in your willingness to live a different way. Not louder, not richer, not more impressive, just truer, more aligned, more alive. Because that's what this world needs. Not more noise, but more resonance. Not more followers, but more rememberers. Not more control, but more light. If this video resonated with you, let us know by commenting. I understood it.